Well, hey, welcome to Fitz's Electric Bar and Grill, without the grill and without the bar. But saddle up, and I want to serve up some Neil Young today, and I'm calling this series, kicking off with Neil Young, the Twofer series. So I was looking through my CD collection, and I seem to recall, but can't seem to find many examples or any worthwhile ones, where the record labels would repackage up music from artists in packages of two. So often you could get two records on one CD, and they were kind of like twofers. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to be my version of the twofer, and I'm going to be looking at two albums that aren't necessarily the most obvious albums in an artist collection or repertoire. So, and of course ones that I particularly love, and the perfect combination is something that isn't as well known and that I absolutely adore. And it appeals to my musical snobbery, and it also appeals to the idea of the discovery. And hopefully some people out there who may not be familiar with these albums might give them a listen and recognize them for what they are, which is great music. The two I'm going to do today: Neil Young's Comes a Time, which came out in, what was it, 1976 maybe? Oh, actually 78, yeah. 1978, I was in second year university when this came out. And of course, where you are when you listen to the music does matter. It really makes a difference. But Comes a Time, some really great folk country era Neil Young. And the other one, On the Beach. And this one, a pretty dark album, beautiful sounding record, and pretty stripped bare, but more, I don't know if it's rock and roll. It's hard to really even describe. It's quite electric for the most part, but it's subdued electric. It's almost like acoustic electric sound, and very stripped down, and very powerful lyrics, and yeah, just compelling. Great record. So we're going to look at Comes a Time and On the Beach, two in the Neil Connect collection. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history in terms of how I came to these records. Interestingly enough, so I was, I guess, 13 when I think Harvest came out, 1972, I believe. I should check that before I say, yes, 1972. So we don't really need to revisit this. Everybody knows Harvest. Anybody who's a Neil Young fan would certainly be familiar. Even if you weren't a Neil Young fan, you couldn't escape it. This was a great record, and just re-released, just had its 50th birthday last year, and then they also had a movie showing. I went with a group of friends, and it was showing the making of Harvest at Neil's Ranch. Really, really good. A great timepiece, and some really nice stuff watching them jam and start to workshop some of the songs that would appear on Harvest. So we all know about Harvest, but this was not an album that it would have come through on AM radio for me, but it never really grabbed me per se. I've gone back and enjoyed it. My discovery of Neil Young, first year university, happened to come from this record, which is not really a record that most people would point to as their intro into Neil Young. But on this record is the track Like a Hurricane. And when I heard Like a Hurricane, it absolutely crushed me. It was kind of like that soaring guitar, the long jam, and just that guitar that weaves its way through. It's just glorious. So Like a Hurricane, heard that on this record. I think somebody in residence, was playing that, and I just thought, this is incredible. Bought the record. It's not one of his best records. It's okay, American Stars and Bars, but it does have Like a Hurricane on it. So that was my first real personal intro into Neil Young. The next thing I did after that, which was a very smart move, was to get the triple album Decade. Really one of the best compilations I think any artist has ever put out. What's so incredible about this is his mixture of both unreleased material, alternate takes, and obscure material, and hits. So it's a real deep dive into his career. And, when you've got 6 sides and it's all killer, no filler, as they say, it was such a great intro and a recognition of the depth of this artist and the music that he that he was able to offer. And one of the quotes in this particular record, I mean, it was just, everything as in terms of an introduction into to Neil Young that you can imagine. A beautiful set. And I played this so much that I've got a few records like this that I had to tape it so that the records didn't fall out. And look at that ring wear. That's been earned honestly through repeat playings. And I haven't really played this probably in about 20 years or something, because I've gone back and gotten all the source music and want to hear the songs in context of the releases that they were originally part of. So famously, what Neil said after releasing Harvest and having, big hits from this, like Old Man and Heart of Gold and everything, he said, "Traveling there soon became a bore, so I headed for the ditch. A rougher ride, but I saw more interesting people there." So that really says a lot about Neil as an artist and as a person, and how he's approached his artistry and his music ever since. And so the heading to the ditch, I guess the fans and fans and media have referred to a run of 3 albums as Neil's Ditch Trilogy. So the 3 albums that followed Harvest, one of them was On the Beach that I'm going to focus on today. One of them was the brilliant Time Fades Away. And the third one is the one that probably has the most attention and is known by the most people, and that would be Tonight's the Night. So Tonight's the Night's good. I honestly, for me, I like them in the order that I just presented them, which is chronological. Love On the Beach. Really like Time Fades Away. And Tonight's the Night is a great, courageous album. And they're just fucked up during the making of it, but I think that was true for On the Beach. I'm not sure about Time Fades Away, but from what I read about On the Beach, they were also doing honey sliders and lots of narcotics as well as drinking. But I find Tonight's the Night a harder one to listen to now. It seems like it's, when you're in the mood, it's a very harrowing record and it's wonderful to listen to. And then when you're not in that mood, it's impossible to listen to. On the Beach is really strange because although the themes are very, very heavy. So one of the things about On the Beach and Tonight's the Night was the passing of Bruce Berry, one of their roadies, and of course Danny Whitten, who was the original guitarist in Crazy Horse, who both died of a heroin overdose. So those losses weighed heavily on Neil, and it comes through in the music and it comes through in the lyrics especially. But On the Beach somehow, even though it's got a very somber feeling to it, I find in terms of the music, it's more listenable and continues to be. So that's the album I'm kind of focusing on now. It's great too. This came out in 1973. So the order of the Ditch Trilogy, Harvest was 72, and Time Fades Away 73, On the Beach 74, and Tonight's the Night 75. So actually Time Fades Away came out before On the Beach. So On the Beach 74, you can see Senator Buckley calls for Nixon to resign is on that newspaper there. And everything, Neil's got some stuff from that era where everything just seems cheap and broken. And I think he's fascinated with that idea of almost like the decay of America, I suppose. That's my editorial, not necessarily Neil's. But this album has got, the lovely See the Sky About to Rain and Walk On, which was a hit for him as well. But it's also got all these blues songs, Revolution Blues, Vampire Blues, Motion Picture Blues, and Ambulance Blues. Contains the famous for me, but the line, "I need a crowd of people, but I can't face them day to day." I think he was being tormented by having lots of hangers-on. When he was hanging out, people would come by and, drink and smoke and do whatever. And he was getting tired of kind of all the leeches who were, hanging on to him and his sort of lifestyle. So this is a great record. Revolution Blues, just gorgeous, and On the Beach, Motion Picture Blues, Ambulance Blues. This record is from top to bottom a killer. It's absolutely fantastic record. And a couple things that are kind of interesting. So he's got, the liner notes in here, and there's a letter from Rusty Kershaw. Rusty played what did he play? So Levon Helm is on this record, and then other members that have played, and Rick Danko is on this record on some of the songs, but also members of, I think, the Stray Gators are the people that have played with him before, Ben Keith, Tim Drummond, and then Ralph Molina on some of the tracks as well from Crazy Horse. But this letter from Rusty Kershaw, I can't read or write very well, so I don't quite understand why anyone would want me to write liner notes, except for what I saw and hear. The first time I saw Neil, his spirit was down. The next time I saw Neil, I tried to boost his spirits with my music, and I did, and it worked. In return, Neil played, sang, and wrote the best of any music in a while, not to speak of the fun we had. We laughed so hard we all had bruised ribs. So, some nice liner notes there from Rusty Kershaw. And I don't know if you can see, but inside is the actual, this is the inside cardboard is, I believe, the same as the underbelly of this umbrella. Very cool. Just an incredible record. On the Beach song. So good. So, album number 1 of my twofer, Neil Young's On the Beach. Next up, when you're talking about artists that have a history like Neil Young, one of the things is when you, as a fan, first become familiar with them. So as I mentioned, I first became familiar with Neil with Like a Hurricane, and became kind of like a personal relationship, kind of started at that point in time, as it were, as a fan. And then got into Decade and started to do deep dive into his collection. But this is the first, I think, record that came out while I had established myself as a fan of Neil Young, and bought this record and as it came out and listened to it in depth. And it really is a folk country hybrid. He plays tracks off of this quite often, like Going Back, Comes a Time, Lot of Love. The backup vocals on here, I think they were called, what would they call them? But anyways, it was Nicolette Larson and Linda Ronstadt, I think, sang backup vocals on this as well. I know she sang on American Stars and Bars. But Nicolette, okay, maybe it was just Nicolette Larson, but she does a great job of doing backup vocals on this. Look Out for My Love is also a really nice track. It's one of the only ones, I think, that's got some electric guitar on it, and it's really cool. It's got, Neil refers to windshield wipers wiping, and he does this thing with the guitar that makes it sound like windshield wipers across the windshield. And then someone saying something, nobody seems to listen, and there's a voice in the background, and then you hear the guitar just like a screaming electric guitar, but it's so muted and so quiet in the mix. It's really, really cool. It's like from another, another planet or something. It's really neat how it's mixed in, and quite unique. I'm not familiar with the way that's been done in any other of his music. Side 2, Human Highway, Already Won, which is really nice. Field of Opportunity with the great line, it's a field of opportunity and it's plowing time again. He's always had a great sense of humor. Motorcycle Mama, and the record closes with Four Strong Winds, which is the Ian and Sylvia Tyson song, a real Canadian thing. And of course, Neil's roots are in Canada. So a beautiful closer and a really nice cover of that. So as related to that, when I listened to that, when I got that record in second year university, I loved it. And I had my first opportunity to go see Neil Young. And he came to Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens. I was going to school in Kingston, Ontario. And I got tickets and went to go see the show. This is one of those stories where, because there was no internet, you're relying on things like Rolling Stone magazine for any information about a tour. I didn't know anything, and I was expecting to see ultimately Neil Young promoting Comes a Time. I didn't know enough about Neil to know that Neil doesn't promote his albums. He's not one to make a point of promoting a new release. But on top of that, I knew nothing about what I was going to see. And what I ended up seeing, again, with no prior knowledge, was what became Live Rust. So Rust Never Sleeps. So the first half of the show, for those of you that don't know, the first half is all acoustic, and it is tremendous. Just him on guitar. It's a beautiful stage set as well, with speakers and things like that, like huge speakers and huge microphones, and kind of a larger than life set. And he opens up with Sugar Mountain, and the whole thing is really about him and his progression through his life as a person and as a musician. And it's a really nice narrative that runs through it. And you don't realize that as you're at the show. I'm just thinking, this is an acoustic show, and he's going to be doing acoustic music all the way through. And that whole first half of the set, Sugar Mountain, I Am a Child, he did the same set in this whole tour, right? Sugar Mountain, I Am a Child, Comes a Time. So it was like, okay, he's promoting the album. After the Gold Rush. And then he introduces My, Hey, Hey, Out of the Blue, an acoustic version of that song. Of course, he does both acoustic and electric on that particular album, the Rust Never Sleeps album. That album had not come out yet. We were basically going to see him on the Comes a Time tour. And again, he goes into more sort of acoustic stuff. When You Dance, I Can Really Love, The Loner, that kind of stuff. Then they take a break, and they have some of the piece of the Woodstock soundtrack in terms of the Don't Take the Brown Acid, and they had these guys called the Road Eyes, so they came out in kind of like black, almost like monk-like suits, and they changed the set. And the second set was all electric, and it was so good. I mean, it was like two concerts in one. It was so fantastic, that electric one. And then the very second to last song, he does Hey, Hey, My, Into the Black. So the acoustic Hey, Hey, or My, Hey, Hey, Out of the Blue, and then Hey, Hey, My, Into the Black. And the lyrics in that is, the king is dead, but he's not forgotten. This is the story of Johnny Rotten. So this is in 1979. So we're in the full sort of flight. And I saw him in 78, the fall of 78, I believe. So we're in full punk mode, right? And Neil is very aware of punk, and he's aware that it is changing everything, and that it's a good thing, clearing out all the detritus and creating a whole new world of music. And so he was very stimulated by that. So he closed with that, and then the encore, Tonight's the Night. Lights on, as I recall, and singing Tonight's the Night. It was just perfect. Stunning show, but all the more stunning because you didn't know what you were getting, and what you were getting was really, really phenomenal. So that's my Neil Young twofer, with a little bit of a chronology of my relationship with Neil. I've had many, many great shows that I've got to see him at, including a bridge benefit and some of the more recent tours with The Promise of the Real. But Neil's the real deal. Neil Young, Comes a Time, and On the Beach. Thanks for joining me. Subscribe if you're up for it. Give me a like, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.